And welcome back in to a brand new episode of Tribal Council Chat. As always, we are your hosts. My name is Bruce Heller.
And my name's Brett Parnell.
And let's dive in. So, episode 11 of Survivor 47. What are your overall
Episode
thoughts?
11. We're almost there. Getting into this two-part finale, which is soon, which is going to be fun. I'm a little worried because I'm sure many of you remember, but we'll have another host in next week. I'm going to be away. And the first week of December tends to be the week that I just take off every year. And a couple times now, we've had my favorite player of the season go home in that episode. So I'm very nervous for what could be coming while I'm away.
To be fair, last season with 46, your favorite player of the season went home in the finale in fifth place. So maybe that'll happen and you'll have a little bit more time than usual again.
Yeah, that could.
Right? Maria was your favorite player of the season last year?
At least once the season got to about halfway, yes. I don't know if I can't remember if she was my pre-game pick or not. I don't think so. But once we started to know the characters, I was cheering for her come merge time.
Yeah, by the point the finale came, I was cheering for Kenzie, partly because she's just such a nice, likable person.
Yeah.
But also because I said at the merge when a good friend of mine gave me a good piece of advice and said that I hedge my bets a lot and want to explain every side and to make bold predictions. So I just came out and said Kenzie's going to win, and I wanted to be right. So
Nice. I'm
that was kind
notably
of my
thinking
rooting interest was self-serving there.
I'm notably thinking when I say new era players that are my favorites that went home in that first week of December when I was in Mexico in 2021, got home to Toronto. I didn't even make it all the way to Ottawa yet before I was like, okay, I can stream the episode here, and realized that Denny McRae went home 1 week before the finale and was just devastated.
Yeah, that sucked. Um, I'm trying to think. I really enjoyed the cast. I don't really remember having, but I don't remember having like a singular standout favorite on 44.
Yeah.
43, 45, our audience knows who my favorite was, knows how that ended. I don't need to bore them this time.
No, you
I'll
don't.
spare you this time, audience, but you will have to listen to me talk about her at some point again in the future. So don't think you're totally off the hook. But and you know you're not off the hook. You've just resigned yourself to it at this point.
Yep.
But 43 again, Cass might have been my favorite, so she went to the end. See, this season I don't know. My favorite early on, I don't know. My favorites go up and down throughout the seasons.
So,
So what are your overall thoughts on this episode though?
yeah, overall thoughts on this episode. I guess I'm probably approaching it from a different angle than you are. Just based on which players we were cheering for. I'm overall pretty happy with this episode. I think it went very well for everybody in the game. The player who went home is one that I thought was safe, judging by last week, but that I've been saying for a while will eventually become the target, and he was.
Yeah.
And the player that I want to win the game is still there, despite the fact that for 2 weeks in a row, she's been a massive target and everyone's talking about it. So I don't know if that's going to either be something like the traders where she just eventually it catches up to her, or if she's getting an edit that could be where they talk about getting rid of her and let her stay 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then after that maybe Genevieve does something like Michelle and wins a couple of challenges late. Danny did the same thing. Jenna did the same thing. Gets to the end, and it's like you guys tried to get rid of me, you couldn't, and now you're stuck. I'm in the final three.
Yeah. My thing with this episode is like the targets came down to, of course, Genevieve and Kyle. And I really like both of them. They were both two of the nicest people I met, getting to meet them in person. I would have been sad to see either of them go. So when I realized those were the two targets, I'm like, oh, well, this stinks.
Yeah.
I love Kyle. I hate that he's gone. I was rooting for him to stay, which I know we had different rooting interests, but I mean, he won four immunities. It was pretty much assumed that by both of us and everyone that when he finally didn't win, he'd be gone, and he was. So it wasn't shocking. I couldn't get my mind off of Cambodia though when Joe Anglim won three immunities in a row and finally didn't win one. And during the streak, everyone's saying we need to beat him. We need to keep him from. He finally didn't win, and they for some reason didn't vote him out there. So I
Yeah.
was hoping we would have that happen again. Unfortunately, this is 47. This is not Cambodia. I could
Yep.
have made an argument for voting either person out, though. Either one made sense. What I what doesn't make sense to me at all, and I want to see the explanation for in next week's episode, is Teeny caught a stray vote here.
Teeny got a vote from, let me check. I looked this up last night.
I'm pulling
But
Wikipedia up right now.
yeah, it was one that was just very bizarre.
It was
Here's the
Kyle's
voting
vote.
history. Yeah. Oh, that made sense. It was Genevieve who got a vote from Andy that I was like, huh? I knew she would get a vote, but I thought Kyle would vote for her.
Yeah, but like, why was Teeny of all? You know, yourself and Genevieve are the targets at this point. Why are
Yeah,
you throwing a random vote away? At least vote for the other person you know is a target and hope other people are doing it.
that's true.
Because Rachel and Sam both wanted it to be Genevieve, and they couldn't get the votes. So
Yeah.
I just don't get the teeny vote, but oh well. So we dive into the episode, and kind of one of the first scenes we see, again, this season's doing such a good job showing us these human moments. And this one isn't, we've seen this before, but it's Kyle's kind of in a sad mood because Gabe just went home and he
Yep.
played a part in that, and it was good for his game. But at the same time, Gabe was kind of the only person he had left that he trusted. So,
Yeah.
and that just goes to show how complicated this game truly is, that something can hurt and suck like that, but you also know it's better for my game that he's not here because he would have gotten me.
Exactly. Um, that's the thing. It's a question for every individual player when it comes to this game on finding a way to separate the human element of the game that's so important because social skills and relationships matter so much in order to win the game. But at the same time, being able to separate those relationships and know, in most cases, sorry, Maria and Charlie, it's going to be okay when you get to the other side. And here we're just playing the game in order to win. If I bluff somebody playing poker, I don't go hating them after.
Yeah, I will say, you mentioned Maria and Charlie, and you may know this. After last week's episode, when like the whole like taking your ally out before they hit you thing was a huge theme last week, I was listening to On Fire, and like one of the not fan questions, the third person on the host, Jay, I don't know if you listen to the show, kind
I
of
do sometimes.
mentioned like, Charlie, you have some experience with this. I think
Yeah.
it's finally time. Him and Maria have not talked like at all,
Wow.
have had since then, Charlie said. So that really shocked me to hear. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, that just, you mentioned them. I wanted to mention that because like that's the hard part too. Like it is a game, and you want people to. You would like to think people know that, but you are building true and genuine relationships and friendships out there, and sometimes people do actually get hurt, and that you don't want it to, but it bleeds outside the game sometimes. And that, again, it's such a complicated game. You have so many different factors to think about, and it's all while your mind is deteriorating because you're not being fed and nutrienated. You're not
Yeah.
nutritioning properly. It's just
That's
it's
exactly it. And
so much.
when you go down to that level of that state, everything that affects you is like times 10,000.
And it's not just the food; it's you're not sleeping well either. It's
Yeah.
man, kudos to Mark Burnett for thinking of this game that just has infinite layers to consider and think about.
Seriously.
It's and I Probst is the showrunner and basically in charge of everything now. I don't know if Mark Burnett is even around, but
No, I think he's in the UK.
we say that the show wouldn't exist without Probst, and it wouldn't, but it's
Yeah.
certainly wouldn't exist without Burnett. So let's not forget him either, because to my knowledge, he's who created it. So
Oh, absolutely.
the next scene we see is we go to Sue, who you and I talked about was probably left out last week. I mentioned that it might have been a 45 situation where like Dee knew Julie was going. See, I told you, audience, you weren't going to get away without hearing the name. But where Dee knew Julie was going home and couldn't bring herself to write the name down. That was not the case. I didn't think it was. I thought it might be, but Sue was completely left out of this and is hurt by that. Especially, and we see this conversation between her and Caroline. And Caroline basically says, like, I've been wanting to play Survivor since I was 5. It's my one of my big goals in life. It's I didn't feel like I had any control over my game. I want to play in a way that the younger version of me could look at and be proud of, essentially. And they kind of hash that out. Sue understands, and they agree that they still want to be each other's number one. So we kind of weren't sure how this would affect Sue's relationship with Caroline. And to me, it really doesn't seem like it does. It seems like they're still, like, Sue's got that blindside in the back of her head still for sure, but there's not this like dramatic divide between them now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like this moment. Like what you say, there isn't that really dramatic divide. We'll see going further in the season if they they don't have a divide. They're not despising each other over the vote, but we'll see if they come to a point where they need each other all the way to the end, or if they don't.
Yeah. So the next scene we see is we see Rachel is starting. There's 8 people left in the game, right? So we've Rachel has built this minority group of 5 where it's her and Caroline. No, let me find it. Yeah, it's her, Sue, Caroline, Teeny, and Andy are the 5, and
Yep.
they want to take the other 3 out. And the 3 on the outside of this group are Kyle, Genevieve, Sam. And this group of 5 that's forming, they kind of all agree like we have a better shot if those people aren't there. So,
Right.
what were your thoughts on this scene? Kind of watching this group form.
5 is a risky number, was my thought. And that's that. Could they be a 5 that works very well together? Yes. Are Genevieve, Sam, Rachel, did I say the wrong name?
Yeah, Genevieve's not in it. It or Sam. It
No, I'm talking about the 3 on the outside.
Oh, Genevieve, Sam, Kyle.
Kyle, that's who I meant. Um, are Genevieve, Sam, and Kyle extremely strong players at this point that are big threats to win the game? Absolutely. So it makes sense. At the same time as I say this every single season, if you have a group of 5 and there's a final 3, 2 of them won't get there if you just stick with the alliance and go to the end.
Yeah.
And the great part about this game is that let's say that this 5 works together and takes out, well, we know they took out Kyle. Let's say next week they take out either Sam or Genevieve. Doesn't really matter. It is so easy at all of the sudden for that one person who survives from this outside group of three to win the game when two people find out, hey, this alliance I'm working with doesn't want to take me to the final three.
Yeah.
And they can come up with a new final three that involves those two plus the one person who managed to survive being a big threat. So Kyle's gone now. I'm not counting Sam or counting Genevieve out of this game whatsoever.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. I'm definitely not counting either of those two out. I've been saying the past 2 weeks in a row I've said I thought Genevieve would go home next. I don't know what to do anymore because she keeps surviving. Thankfully, I like her a lot. She was super nice to me. So two things come to mind. First off, 5 is a risky number. You're right, but you only need to keep 5 is a big number. It's hard to keep big numbers together. You only need it to work for this round. Then you only need 4 next round. So it doesn't have to be this solid 5 till the end agreement. It can just be we need 5. We need to work together this round and go from there. But also, if they do want to say 5 to the end, that's where you need to have. And this was kind of my strategy when I used to play on like these online Instagram Survivor games. Is you need to have an alliance within the alliance. So be starting now, and I'm saying like this is what all 5 should be doing. At least in my opinion. They've played, I haven't, but you have your group of 5, have a group of 3 within that 5, not only for when you get to final 5 and you need to cannibalize your own alliance, but also then the 3 of you can like be making plans with 3 of you, then bring it to the group of 5 and the others will agree with you and you can kind of have more agency and more control that way without the people outside your group knowing maybe. But having an alliance within an alliance seems like a vital move here for them.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's a weird number, but I think it's workable if you do it the right way. And you only need next round you only need to get 4 votes. I think you've reached a point where you can start to take it vote by vote. And not to reference Cambodia again for the second time this podcast already, but one of the big themes of that season was alliances versus like these voting blocks that shift each tribal. And I think there's an argument to be made in favor of either one at this point in the season.
Yeah, very true.
And so right after this, though, we see Kyle on a confessional saying he's a threat and he wants to protect the other big threat so he doesn't stand out. And these other 3, that's what I called them on the notes, these other 3 players kind of start to band together and strategize and formulate amongst themselves, which is interesting. Usually you see this happen and the people on the outside kind of just start fending for themselves, start trying to break the majority, but we see a really smart thing here where the 3 outside of this group kind of start to band together and try to form a small alliance here. I like this.
Yeah, I like that as well. And I think is the perfect way to do it because like I'm saying, that's the strategy they have to do, but then they'll have to find a way to pull somebody from the larger group over and flip the game on its head. And we see that happen almost every season at some point.
Yeah. Has there
the only time it really doesn't happen is like 44.
Has there been any sort of like a merge tribe idol or beware found yet?
Rachel has the merge tribe idol.
Okay. I couldn't remember because traditionally there's an idol at each tribe camp and then an idol at the merge tribe.
Rachel got the idol that was sewn into the tarp.
That's right. Well, darn. I was going to say next week because the 3 is now the 2. It's Sam and Genevieve, but Sam also wants Genevieve out and is scared of her and has gunned for her 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I think maybe he switches course a little bit and maybe works with her.
Could
My
be.
thought, what I was going to say was if one of them wins immunity and the other finds an idol, but there's not an idol out there to find.
They could
So,
go on a journey.
true. And that's a great segue into our next scene. In that you didn't even do that on purpose, which is fantastic.
I mean, let's be honest, I kind of did, but
Fair enough. Which is still funny, but
this was a fun journey while we're at it.
yeah, before we get to the journey itself, they're trying to decide who wants to go. A couple people say they don't want to go. Genevieve and Sam both want to go. And then we see Rachel stand up and say, I'll go, and everyone agrees. And we see Rachel in a confessional say, I don't really feel like I need to go. I already have an idol. But I wanted to go to make sure Sam or Genevieve didn't go.
Yeah,
Which
smart.
is just fantastic from her here. I love this thought process.
It
So
absolutely
smart.
is. Yeah, very smart gameplay. Of course, as we know in the new era, especially, I mean, New School Survivor, this was always kind of the case, but the new era is advantage of getting on steroids. So the only thing that can, if you think your alliance is totally stable, the one thing that can topple the whole game is other players outside of your alliance getting advantages. And if you can get an advantage, get an idol, it can flip the game. So therefore, it's extremely smart to want to make sure that any chance of that set advantage does not go to your rival alliance. And even if Rachel loses her vote, I mean, if the numbers hold and it's 5-3, well, if they can hold 4-3, is not the end of the world either.
Yeah. And so we
Unless
get
somebody had to steal a vote, but we don't have that in this game, at least so far.
no, but we do have some sort of advantage involving votes that we'll get to at the end of the journey.
Yep.
So the journey itself is cool though. It's this game. You've probably seen that they have apps that are this game of like you have
I've
these.
never seen this before, so interesting.
My mom has an app that is basically this game, but
Oh, wow.
more of them, where you have these little colored balls in the column, and you have to move them around until each column is all the same color.
Interesting.
I don't think it was like this here, but what makes the one on my mom's phone harder is that like you have to stack when you're moving them, you have to stack balls on other balls that same color.
Yep.
So, but we don't have a sand timer. Our timer is these ropes, these weights that are tied to these ropes that you drop the first one in, then you start playing the game. And when each one, like each rope is all the way out, it drops another weight attached to another rope.
Yep.
Which I was listening to this while driving today. Go listen to the last On Fire and listen to him explain this. Because he explained like the process from the idea to the execution. And it involves like 4 or 5 different departments of their team. This
Yeah, wow.
it's insane, and so much time and effort and thought all went into this one thing, and that's how everything works with this show.
That's impressive.
Like their production team and all their different departments. They have an art department, marine, challenge, all sorts of different stuff. It's production does an incredible job.
Shout out to that. I was so envious of one Instagram video they posted from the production team the other day because there was a segment about a minute of a lady who is a survivor scuba diver, and I'm like, you have the best job ever.
Nice. These weights
if people wanted to know like what's your dream job, I'm instantly like her job.
These weights, by the way, are old train tires.
Interesting. I did not notice that.
But and the version of like the last grain of sand dropping and the timer running out was the rope yanks the table off the barge into the ocean. That's the other thing. We're not on Journey Island. We're just on a floating platform in the middle of the ocean, middle of nowhere.
The first time when I saw Rachel getting off a platform is I'm like, where is Cochrane hiding?
Nice. Game Changers reference. We don't get a ton of those. But
I I rate Game Changers a lot higher than most people, but maybe it's because I'm more of a Sarah fan than most people.
it's okay. I think there's a couple moments that drag it down. The Varner thing is just true.
Yeah,
Like, that's terrible.
horrible.
On a on a real life, on a game level, the Suri thing sucks. I'm curious what would have happened if Suri had also had an advantage though.
Yeah,
Like
we
I
would have
don't
had something I'm sure you guys always often will refer to on Pit Stop Pals, the non-elimination week.
yeah, it would have has to have been.
Yeah,
But yeah, we are thinking another NEL is coming next week. Kevin's pretty adamant about that, and I believe him.
pardon.
So, but yeah, this is just how the
Sorry, what
timer
is
ends.
Kevin
Is
adamant about? I couldn't hear you.
oh, he thinks our next episode is going to be an NEL.
Mm.
So, and I believe him. But the timer running out is if Rachel doesn't get this game and these columns done in time. And if she doesn't grab the advantage box, is that the table with the game and the advantage box on it just gets yanked off this platform into the ocean. Which I would hate to be the team that has to go after that and fish all the ropes and train tires and table out of the ocean.
Yeah,
But Rachel's working hard at this game, stresses us out as the audience because they'll show her for a little bit and then they'll show a while of ropes unwinding and being pulled into the water. But Rachel does it. She finishes it, grabs the box, and like as soon as she grabs the box, the table, in a very wild fashion, goes flying off the platform into the water. And she reads that her advantage is not only a block of vote, but it's a secret block of vote. So the person won't find out till they go to vote, which is interesting because from my memory, a lot of times when we see block a vote, it's not secret, it's public. You have to
yep,
sit there and say, I'm blocking this person from voting.
yeah, exactly.
This is so much better because they have
Oh, it
no idea
is.
who's did it. That is
It'll
so
it'll
cool.
get played a lot more likely when you think it's in your best interest as opposed to thinking if I block somebody's vote that whoever is in the alliance is just going to target me the next night.
Yeah. So Rachel does get it. She comes back and tells the whole group the story, but tells them she lost the game so that the the other three don't know what she has. Then she comes back immediately and tells her allies the truth
Yep.
and that she has it. And this is where we learn what the secret to getting Sue to trust you is. Did you catch this?
No, go ahead.
It, the secret to earning Sue's trust is super simple. Tell her about your advantage. Because she's basically like, and she says this in a confessional, I think she says it to Rachel, like, early in the game, day one or day two, Gabe came up to me and said he wanted to work with me and told me he found the beware and he trusted me with that and I trusted him fully after that. And now Rachel's telling me about her advantages and I feel like I can trust her 100% now.
Very true.
All you have to do to get Sue's trust is just tell her you have an advantage, apparently.
I'm going to mute and go off camera and be back in 20 seconds. I just need to drink water because I'm choking.
No, you're fine. So while he's gone, yeah, this is kind of we see Sue saying in a confessional that she fully trusts Rachel now because Rachel showed her
There we
this
go. I'm back.
advantage, and that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that was. I didn't think of that when I was watching it, but it makes perfect sense. The thing that I was wondering here, though, is too, and this kind of ties back, and I'm curious to know what you think, Bruce. It kind of ties back into what I was saying about where there's always somebody who could be on the bottom. Do you think it was a smart move of Rachel to, after telling her tribe that she lost the game, telling her alliance that she won the game? because those Alliance members in a 26-day game could not be Alliance members in 48 hours.
I mean, maybe, but I feel like this increases the chances that they stay alliance members because you're showing them trust, and the
True.
idea is that they'll reciprocate that back to you because you took a risk and showed faith in them. So I think it could
Makes
be a
sense.
mistake, but I think it could also really help.
Yeah, I could see that.
The next scene after this is really interesting my from Caroline, who I am on record right now saying is she's gonna win. I still think so. And she goes, "This is great. I want Rachel to have an advantage." And Caroline says she wants Rachel to have an advantage because it increases her threat level, and that makes her a good ally to Caroline. And that's she basically kind of says that makes her a shield for me. She doesn't use the word shield. I'm inserting that. The Jeremy Collins meat shield thing a little bit is what I'm reminded of.
Yeah, I
But
remember had the same thing.
I tried to write this quote down verbatim, but I was watching it live, so I couldn't back it up. People who are targets now are shields later, or something like that. And just, I love this thought process from Caroline of, yeah, I want to be allied with the people that are big, strong players in the game. Because if they're in the game, people are going to be looking at them and not me.
Yeah,
Which, again, is the good old fashioned Jeremy Collins strategy that has
sure
worked
is.
very well for him over 3 seasons.
Yeah, and that's a great strategy to use. Um, Especially at this point of the game, you will have to figure out how to cut that shield at the last minute, but it certainly keeps pressure off of you, which is always vital in this game. As I mean, we're kind of seeing in Genevieve's position now where she's just getting talked about as a good player multiple episodes in a row. And that's not a good spot to be in either.
Yeah, and our next scene is kind of a misstep from Genevieve, in my opinion, but I get where she was coming from. Is her and Rachel on the beach, and she's like, "Hey, I want to make a pitch here and vote for people that are being shepherded to the end, like Sue or Andy." And Rachel pretends to agree, like you do,
Yeah.
and and then goes right to Andy, her ally, and says, "Hey, Genevieve threw your name out there and says you're just being dragged to the end." I feel like Genevieve knows the game and like has read what's happening well enough to know that that probably wouldn't go well. Like I don't know. I'd love to know the thought process behind this pitch here because she abandoned it. We don't hear this pitch from her again, so she
No.
abandoned it really quickly
I
after
think the
this.
thought process, if she's telling that to somebody like Rachel, is that I think you would probably agree with me that Genevieve is right now a big threat to win the game,
Yeah,
despite being in not great position to get to the end. I also think you would probably agree with me that Rachel could also be said about the same thing, that she's a big threat to win the game.
yeah,
By Genevieve pitching this proposal, I think Genevieve is confident, whether it's right or wrong, who knows, but that she could beat anybody. And I think she's confident enough to do that, that she could tell Rachel, we as both big threats that are playing excellent games could get to win the game, could get to the end together, so that therefore Rachel isn't that person who, like I was speaking of earlier, that finds Andy and Sue and Caroline all turn on her and vote her out at 5. Kind
yeah,
of like in the Jessie spot where she's going to win and then she's gone, or Lauren O'Connell's spot.
yeah. So
But if she was working with people who also saw themselves in that same thing, it almost took me back as I'm talking. And when I was watching it, I thought the same thing. It almost took me back to when it was at war. Genevieve's making the lions and hyenas thing that Tony talked about.
yeah, true. And we kind of get a 41 reference too with lions and lambs, which was
Yeah,
kind of how they phrase Erica's storyline.
very true.
And so right here though, and I this is part of why I think it was a big mistake. is this is where Rachel kind of realizes, oh, Genevieve is a lot more dangerous than Kyle. Kyle's a challenge threat, but other than that, we really haven't seen much from him. Genevieve is sneaky and dangerous and will throw any name out there she needs to.
Yep.
And so, moving to the immunity challenge, it's an iconic challenge in Survivor history. We've seen it a ton of times. You have a table tied to a rope, you have a long lane to walk, you're holding the table up while stacking the word immunity vertically with blocks.
I've heard players say that this is one of the most annoying challenges to ever be part of.
Oh, I bet it was.
That
And so
we
it
see it.
is.
We see everybody make a few attempts. I've heard players say this can go for hours.
I fully believe that. I will be right back, by the way.
So, but yeah, so like Bruce was saying, it's that challenge that we're holding onto a rope, trying to keep an extremely wobbly table balance, spelling the word immunity. And on this season, we start to see a new strategy, which I thought personally was fascinating. And that's that the players are spelling the word immunity backwards on their own table so that that way they don't end up like players we've seen in the past simply spell immunity wrong and therefore lose their shot at immunity. Um, Very smart move by the players who did that. I think most of them did in this season. If not, they quickly caught on and started doing it right away, but really limited the source of error. Unlike, say, in past seasons that we've seen players just try these sorts of things and make simple mistakes that really cost them the entire game. I'm looking at um, Ben, um, for example, in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers.
Yeah, and that one was. I'm back, by the way. Sorry, I had to use the restroom all of a sudden. So,
No problem. I was
uh,
just talking while you were gone about the strategy that players implemented in spelling immunity upside down on their own tables at the start of the challenge so that that way they weren't going to make mistakes moving down the line.
yeah, that
I
was
thought that
really
was
smart.
really
I
smart.
love that. I love the Heroes, Healers, Hustlers reference, though, because this challenge was a little bit different there.
Yeah.
It was, instead of vertical blocks, it was like rectangular blocks that you spelled out Heroes, Healers, Hustlers
Well,
this
this
way. It
it
had
was also a
multiple
final
layers.
immunity challenge.
What?
It was also the final immunity challenge.
Yeah, but like had multiple layers on top of it that you had to stack that were wide instead of just a tower
Mhm.
that were thinner to stack on top of though. And Ben had it but had the U upside down. So this challenge is a nail biter though. We see a ton of people get we see Teeny get super close and then drop it. We see it come down to Rachel and I think Genevieve, and Genevieve drops. And it's down to Rachel and Kyle, and Kyle's having to rush. And he gets his last letter on as she's like, Rachel is like a few steps away. And he's booking it back. He's going as fast as he can without dropping anything. And he almost caught her.
Yeah.
I was rooting for him hard here because I wanted to see him tie the record and I wanted to see him stay. But like he went for broke and it almost worked. He almost caught her.
Yep. He did.
Which she was way ahead of him at first. So Rachel wins in what ended up being a nerve-wracking immunity challenge. Great job, editing team, for the way they did that challenge scene because I was on the edge of my seat there. And so I wrote down after that. Also, Rachel was wearing Tiana's blue Hawaiian shirt in this challenge. I just want to note that.
That's funny. I didn't miss. I totally missed it.
And I think a couple weeks ago, someone, maybe Sue, wore Rome's like tank top with the lightning bolt on it.
Oh, really?
But after the challenge, I wrote Kyle is dead, I fear, because we've been saying for weeks the second he doesn't win, he's dead.
Yep.
This is where we see Rachel say when it's a real obvious vote, it's a perfect time to take out someone. I don't know what this I don't know what this word I tried to write was, but basically someone under the unsuspecting. That's what it was. Someone unsuspecting like Genevieve or Sam. And this is again great
Yep.
thought process from Rachel, thinking kind of ahead of the curve here, I think.
Yeah, very smart process from Rachel in that point, but as we see, it doesn't really play out for much of the episode either.
No, and I was rooting for honestly what she was saying made sense to me. Like I was on board with that. She has Andy on board with it briefly, where Andy's like pulling out, despite having island brain and no sleep and no food brain, pulling out math and probabilities. And it's like, hey, there was like a 6.2% chance that he wins again. That's not very much. Let's take out a bigger threat. Caroline not really wanting to hear it. Teeny not hearing it because and here's the thing, I feel like Teeny should have been more open to this because she more than anyone knows how big of a threat Genevieve is and did have that dramatic divide with Genevieve that we thought Sue might have with Caroline. So I was surprised Teeny
Right.
wasn't never really even considered this.
Yeah, that surprised me as well, especially after what we've seen in the relationship so far this season. Um, Notably after Saul went home.
Yeah. So not much from Tribal. We have Kyle points out that kind of pleading his own case that he may not be as big of a threat as they think. And he points out that people have beasted out in immunities before and not gotten the jury votes to win. I'm looking at you, Ozzy, in season 13.
That they have.
There's
Very
others,
true.
but that's the one that came to my mind. And so Kyle basically says, like, yeah, I'm good at challenges, but that doesn't mean I'll win. I'm not that great at anything else. And
Yep.
so we get a little bit of interesting conversation from Teeny of and being an outward and obvious threat versus a sneaky underdog threat, which
Yeah.
Genevieve immediately picks up on is, hey, the sneaky threat that Teeny's talking about is me. Ultimately, all of this talk of possibly going for a sneaky target and making a bigger move amounts to nothing. Kyle goes home with
It does.
every vote.
Can I just say one more thing in Tribal?
Yeah.
That interaction between Probst and Caroline and Genevieve was just amazing.
Yeah.
How Caroline doesn't even phrase it as this was said. I'm like playing in my mind as she gives her quote. Oh, did Perf say that? Did Sandra say that? Did um, Rob say that? And it's when she's like a great Survivor player once said, and then she's talking about the woman sitting right next to her, just only increasing her target.
So smart. I love that so much. I'm glad you pointed that out. I forgot about that. Ultimately, all this talk about possibly making a big move and blindsiding a more dangerous threat amounts to nothing. We make the easy vote out. We vote out the challenge beast Kyle, who, and I get it, don't get me wrong, but I kind of agree with Kyle. Like, if he gets to the end, I don't think he win. Like, it's not a guarantee he wins if he
Yeah.
gets to the end.
I
But
think it depends who he's sitting next to.
yeah,
I think about half this cast Kyle beats very easily if he's not sitting next to Caroline, Genevieve, or Rachel.
I think it's a harder road for some than others for sure, but I think everyone still has a path to victory at this point.
I agree.
Even Andy,
Yeah,
who kind of had his weird moment in the premiere and thought he was done.
and he's still here.
Yeah, and he's in a good spot, and he tells us he's in a good spot a lot, actually.
Whether that's Andy being right or being cocky, who knows? But
I still want to know where he pulled all that math out from. There's no way Island Brain was doing math and probabilities that quickly.
yeah,
Maybe, I mean,
absolutely.
he probably was. I believe it, but I can barely do that type of math on my head now. So shout out to him. But Kyle does go home. I wrote down on my notes, Kyle gone. I'm sad. I'm pretty much, it's expected. It's a simple, straightforward vote. So that's our recap portion of this episode. Where do you want to go next?
Let's do a power rankings starting at who's your number one.
Starting from the top this week. So
Well,
I'm
I guess
still,
we should say before we say who's number one in the power rankings, because we didn't do it at the beginning, who's your player of the episode? Because
I
player of
forgot
the
about that.
episode is not necessarily going to be who is your number one in your power rankings. Number one in your power rankings is who you feel is in the best spot at this point of the game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Caroline. She was able to keep her relationship with Sue basically unharmed.
Yeah.
She, when the Genevieve thing started coming up, she dissuaded people from that. She has a shield now, as we talked about.
Yeah.
Great episode for her.
Yeah, well said. I agree with you. So I got really nothing to add, but Caroline's my player of the week as well.
As for power rankings, starting with number one this week, because I will. I mean, it's going to be Caroline. I still think she's going to win. I think she's in a great spot to win, and her name hasn't come up at all in the post merge. So,
Yeah, she's high on my list. I'm still going to put it as Rachel in my
yeah,
number one spot. Rachel now only. Caroline might be playing the better social game. Rachel is now clearly dominant playing the new era game. She has an immunity idol. She can block somebody else's vote. We only have one, two, three, four. We only have 7 players left in the game, so she has to use all of that before the next 2 tribal councils.
also, block a vote is only good till 6.
Yeah,
That's weird. Most idols and advantages are good till 5.
maybe they're finally picking up what I've been saying for years about if you're going to have fire, get rid of the idols at 5. I mean, I know they're not doing that with idols for this season, but I mean, they should.
Yeah, I'm sure he has a reason. It just felt like a weird time to like.
But there's been some advantages too. Like I'm thinking back to whatever it was called. I can't remember, but the advantage that Suri kind of tried to steal from Lucina that said it was valid till 6.
Legacy advantage.
Yeah, that's it.
That one's good at like specific rounds too. It's like
Right.
good at 13 or good at 6.
Yeah.
And that one's also cool for the audience because if you get voted out with it, you will it to someone else. It stays in the game until it gets used.
Exactly.
But my number two, I'm going with Rachel for the reasons you said. She's in a fantastic spot.
Yeah. Makes sense. And for the reasons you said, I'm going with Caroline here.
This is where things
So we
start to
once
get in.
again have the same uh, two players in the same spots, but just completely inverted.
This is where things start to get interesting a little bit.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with Teeny here at 3.
Okay. Why? How so?
I mean, she's in the majority alliance right now, much like Caroline and Rachel. In the post merge, we haven't heard her name come up almost at all. At all. Everyone seems to like her. I
Makes
think the
sense.
other two have done more than her resume wise, but I think Teeny's in a good position. I don't think she's going home soon.
Yeah, that's a good point. Looking at who's left, I think I'm going to put Genevieve in this spot. I don't, she's in still a rough point of the game, but we're getting such a big edit from her that I think that she's still got a lot of games still to play and is probably playing playing the most aggressive game of the year and playing the biggest moves game of the year. And we'll see whether that leads her to get voted out or if she's able to flip on some people and make any past attempt to get rid of her too late.
Yeah, for sure. And so my four, I am going to go with Sue.
Makes sense.
She's in the majority alliance. She really hasn't made a ton of missteps. I also just don't think she's done a ton.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
like putting the fact that I'm not her biggest fan aside, just character wise, personality wise, it was a good episode from her this week. We saw some like genuine moments. We saw some raw emotional moments that I like. I just I at this point, if she gets to the end, I don't know whose jury vote she's getting or why.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't have a resume.
And I'm just going to add in one more aspect to that she also is still sitting on an idol.
Which
And
works in her favor because she
it
still
does.
has it.
And using that, my number 4 is Sue.
Yeah, and I know you've said you would have played it 2 or 3 times by now, but she hasn't needed it and she still
Yeah.
has it in case the votes come her way.
The last couple of weeks, I wouldn't have played it if I were her, but like 3-4 weeks ago, I thought she might have needed it.
Yeah, and she ended up not. So good for her for knowing
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
At 5, rounding out the majority alliance, I'm going with Andy. I tend to agree with him. I think he's in a good spot. He's got options here, but I think other people have better cases for the jury so far. He's got some work to do.
Right.
So.
At 5, I'm gonna go with Teeny in this spot. We haven't seen a whole ton from them much, specifically after the Sol vote. I just kind of get the sense that Teeny could just be that player who goes home maybe first vote of the finale, maybe 1 week before the finale. Because they are a likable player and does have relationships, but maybe isn't as big of a player as one that could actually get the votes to win.
Yeah, for sure.
Which leads us to our final 2. You have Genevieve and Sam. I have Andy and Sam. Who's in your 6th spot?
Yeah, so I have the 2 outside the majority here. I'm going to go with Sam here at 7. He's in a bad. I said last week I didn't think he was in near as bad of a spot as he thought he was.
Yep.
I don't know that I still think that because they've made it clear at this point, the majority, that they don't want him in the game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he'll be able to flip numbers or not because Rachel doesn't trust him because he's not given her a ton of reason to this season, as we talked about last week. I think
I
it's
can see
50-50 next week between him and Genevieve who goes home. I'm putting him ahead of her and putting her at last because she's been the other target 2 weeks in a row now. So I think she's being closer to going home, and that's on people's minds.
Fair. I'm also going to put Sam in this spot. I think Sam is, like you said, probably a risk to go home. Could he? Absolutely. Will he? He still has a chance to survive the round. He's now that Kyle's gone, I'm looking forward to seeing does Sam look maybe any better in challenges like we might have expected from him, but Kyle was just running the show. Um, that's why I'll put him here. I don't necessarily think he's going to win the game. I still see a chance that Sam, like, say, gets to the end and maybe is that like second place player with one vote that comes from Sierra.
Yeah.
But we'll see if this alliance of five is an alliance or a voting block. I think that's going to be the biggest storyline going into of next week's episode.
Nice.
So that leaves you with Genevieve last, me
Yep.
with Andy last.
And
Go
I kind
ahead
of
on
already talked about Genevieve with Sam, so go ahead and talk about it, Andy.
Andy is a player that I just see for this group could become a liability and might be a little too risky to keep around when you're going deep into the game and needing to make sure that nothing gets messed up.
Yeah.
And we've seen Andy a number of times, be it with Sam and Sierra, or be it right up to this week with um, Rachel and relaying information that came from Genevieve. He just makes more. I think of all the players in this game, not Sam. Andy makes impulsive decisions, and I don't know if you're the majority alliance if you can 100% trust him. So sometimes it's easiest to take out that player before they become a liability to you and flip, and then there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that Andy is going this week.
Nice. Do you want to go first with Align Blindside first boot, or do you want me to?
I can go. I got a list right here. So, like we said, next week, Bruce, you're going to be sitting in this chair with Kevin Oliver,
Yeah.
a fellow member of the fantasy draft, who's going to be replacing me while I'm away. So I am going to give you 3 castaways with ties to the upcoming cruise itinerary that I'm going to be taking.
Oh boy.
So for the representing the United States Virgin Islands, a player that used to live there at one point in time before recently getting married and moving back to Las Vegas, Adam Klein.
Nice.
Representing the Dominican Republic, a player who proudly professed his Dominican heritage on the first episode right after they hit the beach. I guess I should call him Billy from I2 Tribe, Billy Garcia in Cook Islands.
Nice.
And representing our home port of Orlando, Florida, someone who's been on this podcast is a great friend of Tribal Council Chat, Liz Wilcox.
Nice. Love that so much. I'm going to first boot Adam. He's the only winner. He's the most dangerous player here. I mean, yeah. I am going to blindside Billy, which stinks because he seems like a likable guy. But, I mean, I have a pre-existing relationship with Liz. We've had her on the show. We've messaged with her. She commented on our YouTubes last season. So, I'm going to ride with Liz to the end and hope I win.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the exact same thing. Especially being in an alliance with Liz would be great. She was such a great guest on our show. She could have helped a player in her alliance in a challenge, which would be very useful if you're allied with her, not if you're Maria. Billy, I agree. Great guy. It would be fun to see him go further. It's unfortunate that he went second. I'm sure you noticed the prefix, but by calling him Billy from I2 Tribe, was
Yeah,
a nod to Candace from Hero Tribe.
that's funny.
If you
Yeah, I caught
ever
that.
want to laugh your ass off and you're a new school, new era Survivor fan, just go online and put Billy Garcia Survivor in YouTube, and you'll see one of the funniest moments that this show has ever given us. And then that leads me to also first boot Adam. I think I would love to work with Adam. I would love to play with Adam. He's one of my favorite new school players of the game. Probably amongst new school winners, I would put him like one spot below Michelle. Just like Michelle, he was a player that I was cheering for from day one, and he ended up winning. But I don't want to take Adam to the end either. He knows everything about this game.
Yeah. So in honor of my guy Kyle going home this week, Kyle is the challenge beast of the new era. I said last week I took that title away from Jonathan and gave it to Kyle. I've got 3 challenge beasts for you,
Nice.
but the twist is because you gave me one winner and I was able to first boot that person and have an easy choice. My challenge beasts are all 3 winners.
Fun.
So from Palau, and I don't have the exact number of challenge he won, but I'm counting him as a challenge beast. Tom Westman. Yep. You've got Kim Spradlin, who is tied with Kelly Wigglesworth for most female individual immunity wins at 4.
Yep.
And you've got Dee Valladares, who got 3 in her season.
Nice. And also tied with Jenna, may I add.
And tied with who?
Jenna as well.
Yeah. Did Jenna get 4 also?
Yep.
Oh, my bad.
All right. So Kim, Dee, and Tom. I am going to align with Kim. It's hard to, I mean, I have to align with winners at this point. I have to align with excellent players. We did see some signs in winners that were that Kim might not be as dominating of a player as she was in her first season against better players. I'd still lose to her, no question. I wouldn't stand a chance against her, but I don't think I'd stand a chance against any of these people. Yeah. Of this list, she's probably the one I'd want to work with most. I'm going to blindside Dee. I think that would probably be, especially in the new era, the biggest resume move that you could make of these 3 players. Dee's certainly the best player that we've got in the new era. And really ran all 3 aspects of the game. That's going to lead me to first boot Tom. And it goes back to, we haven't talked about Palau yet that much on this podcast, but it goes back to where I almost think that I would have probably, if I was sitting there, may have voted for Katie, which I know is very unpopular in the Survivor community. Tom played a great physical game, no question. That's why he's here in this list. As someone who was cheering for Kobe on that season, his social game wasn't all that great. And I feel that the same way that Kobe was kind of ostracized from the Kuro tribe, I might be in that position too with Tom.
Tom's social game wasn't there. Great. But his physical game was there every time. And his strategic game was also just... If it was him and Ian at the end, I would lean towards Ian. And Ian would have got... With the final 2 being Tom and Katie, I just don't think I can make an argument that she played a better game than him, honestly. I don't think it's close. I get why you would vote for her in that sense when you bring up the social game and Kobe, but just overall... But here's the thing, is I'm going to first boot him for this reason. I think I would have a better shot at beating him than either of the 2 girls. But I mean, I don't know. I don't trust Tom to not kind of steamroll me a little bit and not want to listen to... I don't feel like me and him would work well together. I feel like he'd want to dominate the strategizing and want everything to go his way.
Exactly.
Which, not that that happened with him and Ian, but I'm not saying it didn't happen either. Like, I feel like
Yeah,
Ian kind of went along with a lot of Tom's plans sometimes.
right.
Tom, I have conflicting feelings on Tom his first season. I both like
Mm,
him and don't like him in that season.
interesting.
But also, I meant to say this at the beginning because I always start these by saying, here's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do with this round I gave myself is lose the game. I just want to point that out.
So I think I know where you're going here.
There's no way I'm beating any of these people.
No.
And both of the women seem awesome to work with and spend time on an island with. But I'm going to go with the one I like better. I'm going to go to the end with D.
Yeah.
I don't I've said before, I think she's the new era version of Kim. I think their games are very similar in that they both just
Mm,
completely dominated all three aspects of the game. Kevin disagrees with me when I say that, but I mean, you look at it, they have very similar arcs.
fair.
I I'm not gonna compare casts back and forth because I don't. I feel like 45 might be a stronger cast than 24, but
By far. No questions
well,
asked.
yeah, I was trying to be nice, but D and Kim are. I
I mean,
mean, they're kind of
when
the
you're a
same player
cast
in my mind, resume wise.
when you're a cast who the top two players on a men's tribe in the season call themselves Tarzan and Troyzan, it's probably not the strongest cast.
Yeah. Well, and 45 didn't have Colton, so.
Yeah, that too.
And Troyzan somehow got brought back. I just want to point that out because
And
that's
he
still
made the
kind
final
of.
three.
Yeah, that's even crazier. I have no explanation for him being brought back or him making it.
This is
But
my island.
D and Kim, I really don't know how to separate them. They both won. They both were dominant. They both were like, they said something in a confessional of, oh, this person might be a threat to me. Then the person went home that episode or the next episode.
Yeah.
They're both killing me. And the only reason I'm not going to the end with Tom is I think if I tried to work with Tom, neither one of us would get to the end. I don't think
And
me and
that's
him
what
would work well
was my
together because
thought exactly.
I don't think Tom would listen to me. I think he'd do the old head thing of you're too young, listen to my experience
Yeah.
because I'm old. So I'm lose. Even if I went to the end with Tom, though, I lose. So
Yeah.
I doomed myself and you with this little game here. This was
But
a
hey,
fun episode.
I'm somebody who has routinely in this podcast picked to go to the end with a player who has never gotten voted out of this game despite playing multiple times. So I mean, sometimes you just do that. I totally get your picks, and I think they're a good choices.
Yeah, like I said, even if I had gone to the end with Tom and we made it there together somehow, he beats me, I think.
Yeah.
What I do this game is I lose. So, doomed myself a little bit.
Oh well.
This was a fun episode. Check out all the Reality Realm shows. I'm not sure when, we haven't talked about it, but we'll have a Reality Realm Network related announcement coming up at some point.
Yeah.
We need to discuss when, and we need to discuss it with another person. But we'll
That'll
have an
be
announcement.
exciting. Check
Well,
out new Generation Challenge podcast. We're getting close to the end of the season. I'm gonna just update it for because I know this is a Survivor audience. Only 6 girls left in the challenge so far. Um, and only one of them has never actually won the challenge, and that's Michelle. She's just playing an amazing game. Also, check out the challenge season 40 Battle of the Eras. Even if it's not your kind of show, watch the finale.
for sure.
And TT and I'll be here talking about the finale after it's over. And also on you when we post this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe for more access to content and like of the videos so that YouTube finds out that um, gets tribal council chat in the algorithm.
Yes. So with that, and check out Pit Stop Pals. We have a ton of fun shenanigans, hijinks going on over there. And tune in next week when Kevin is on this show with me. Actually, so for a recap, which he hasn't been on here for a while to do, and I know he's
Yeah.
super excited about. So with that being said, grab your torches and head back to camp. Bye, everyone.
Good night.